dramatic. Coming to you cordless, everybody, from downtown Minneapolis. I'm Jim Peters. It's Monday night, October 24th, 2024. It's 8 p.m. No, it's 9 p.m. on the East Coast, 6 p.m. on the West Coast, 8 a.m. in Singapore, and noon in Sydney, Australia. And welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. I am Jim Peters. That's me. Did I say that already? Look, this is only the fifth time we've done this. I'm getting confused. Done the show for a year and a half. Had to change the entire format. Can't tell you why I had to change it, but I did. So it's mostly audio now, although we still have the video feed on Rumble. And we changed the camera angle so I look a little better. I was kind of weird. I looked like I had thick glasses and a giant turkey neck there. And it's like, yeah, I look. So we changed the camera angle a little bit. So I'm doing this. I used to do this from a studio. I'm doing it from my office now. And that wasn't a budget consideration. Can't get into what's going on here. At any rate, our guest tonight is Larry Newman, bail bondsman extraordinaire and investigator for the Bigfoot Field Research Organization, which is the legit Bigfoot organization in the United States. It's kind of like MUFON. It's MUFON for Bigfoot is basically what it is. So we're going to be talking to him. And then the second part of the show, I'm going to take your phone calls. That's 563-999-3435. And I just want to point this out here. I did put in the billboard in the description for the show we posted this afternoon. It said, we're going to talk to Larry about the election and Bigfoot. And I said, then in parentheses, I said, not the election of Bigfoot. And then I said, well, oh wait, maybe. And I'm thinking, made me think, okay, so somebody's going to read this and going to think, I'm talking about some foot fetish with Kamala or something like that. Can someone explain it? Can someone call me later on and explain to me what men find so sexy about feet? Because I got to admit, I do not get it at all. I know men are like obsessed with this, and I do not get it. It's beyond me. So, at any rate, we're going to talk to Larry in just a moment. First, we're going to play a commercial here. We do that. We have those things. So, here we go. Hi, all. I want to talk to you about Conk News. You've probably heard me talk about this before, but if you're a news junkie, you should try this out. Conk News is a news aggregator. Now, there are plenty of news aggregators on the web, but Conk News is different than all the rest, and here's how. Most other news aggregators will lump the top stories from each news source under that news source. The top 10 stories, like, for example, from Fox News, Breitbart, the New York Post, etc. What Conk News does is it sends its servers out onto the web to over 75 different news sources every 3 hours. And yes, this is an automated process, but in this case, that's actually a good thing. And collects the latest stories from said 75 sources and then lays them out on its own front page in the order they were posted, regardless of the source. So you see the latest stories at the top of the front page, regardless of where they're from. And this is all free to you. You don't need to log in. You don't need to subscribe, register, nothing. It's completely free. All you have to do is go to conk.com to check it out. That's conk.com, 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 Conk News. Larry, are you there?
I am here, Jim.
Can you hear the real dramatic music?
Yes.
Yeah, real dramatic. All for you, man. So
thank you.
You're in Missouri right now, right?
Yes, I am.
Let me introduce you again. Larry Newman is the president of the. All right, let me see if I can get this right. I don't have it written down in front of me right now. The president of the Missouri Alliance of Professional Bail Bondsmen. Is that what it is? Bail bond agents, right?
Correct.
And a licensed Bigfoot investigator with the Bigfoot Field Research Organization.
Yes.
And a very attractive man, if you're into that sort of thing. I'm not, but no offense. All right. Okay, Larry. So yeah, first of all, let's talk about the election. So, okay. All right. So all right. I guess this is the best troll ever done. This thing about Trump going to McDonald's, but the amazing thing is, I'm astonished at how the left has completely lost their minds over this. I don't know if it's just because I don't know, is it the ultimate comeuppance or what is it?
Oh, he is a common person. He is a common man. He could sit down and talk to anyone about anything, just like you were sitting in your living room having a conversation, and they cannot comprehend the depth of intelligence that this man has.
I'm glad
And
you
it
hold it.
just,
I'm glad you brought that up because that is really true. You know, he boasts and brags about the fact he's a genius, but the fact is, I actually think that's true.
I don't, I don't know that he's ever been actually certified as a genius, but if you sit and listen to him in these conversations with um, political people, common people, one-on-one conversations, he is an extremely intelligent man, but he's got an uncommonly high uh, amount of common sense to go with it, and that's extremely rare.
Now, that could come from what he does for a living, which is, building development, where you basically, I mean, it sounds like I'm being funny here. I'm not. You can't be wrong. You know, if you calculate the stress on the building wrong, you're screwed, and you're gonna not only you're gonna lose all your money, you're gonna be out of work for the rest of your life. So there's that. But the thing that I don't really understand is how does a guy who's born, I mean, admittedly born wealthy, with a silver spoon in his mouth, never had a problem with feeding himself a day in his life. How does a guy, most people like that can't relate to like construction workers. And I don't know if that's because he hired them or what, but he has no trouble relating to people who are barely getting by. And I don't know, I don't understand where do you think that comes from? You have any idea?
Well, his father was not wealthy when he started. He built himself up, and he was a self-made man, and was still um, working his way up as Donald was growing up. And so Donald wasn't your typical wealthy child from hugely wealthy parents. He grew up uh, following his dad and learning from him. The thing about Donald Trump is that he has spent his whole life working with the construction people. And I'm talking about the average man on the job.
Yeah.
He had to work with them. He had to learn how to get along, how to get the best out of them and give the best to them. So his whole life has been spent working with the common working man. And that's, I think, a lot of where his intelligence and his adept nature comes from, his ability to make a decision, turn on a dime, depending on the situation. He is a past master at that. And then on top of that, he deeply cares for people.
I was thinking about this today when I was reading all this stuff about this trip to McDonald's, and everybody's always talked about oh Joe Biden's, Scranton Joe, average Joe, all this sort of stuff. And then you look at this guy who's wealthy and like, well, first of all, I would like to point out, and I'm assuming this is a fact, so I'm assuming you agree, that Donald Trump says his dad gave him $1 million to start his business. His biographer says it was actually $40 million. But even if it was $40 million, the fact of the matter is he turned $40 million into $5 billion, which is like, what is it, 120 times or something like that? The vast majority of people are handed $40 million by their parents, just blow it on cocaine. Ergo, do you see where I'm getting here? I mean, you look at Biden's kids. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, this guy's Hitler and all this sort of stuff. And then you look at the two comparisons of these two families, and there's not much of a comparison. I mean,
Well, Donald Trump, his father loaned him the money for his first big deal. and Donald paid it back.
Yeah, I know that's true.
How many kids growing up? Okay, your parents are going to help you, but to give you that kind of a loan to get your business started and then pay it back, he wasn't handed anything.
Yeah.
So, and I, excuse me, I don't know. I can't tell you the dollar amount that his father was worth, but as Donald Trump was growing up, his father was building his business, and he didn't start out rich. So this whole family has worked their way up. But as someone who's worked with people for 55 years, 50 years, better than that, I've worked with people, and you have to learn how to work with the working man. If I'm building a building, I can't just sit in my ivory tower and flip a switch and things get done. I have to go down there and be on the ground and work side by side with them to find out what they need to get the job done. And that's the kind of man he is. He's down there on the ground, and he started out as a kid, cleaning up the work sites. That was one of his first jobs, was on the ground, helping the guys on the ground, working shoulder to shoulder with them before he ever got to the point to where he got a loan from his father.
Larry, my accountant has told me this, and I found this and this might apply to what you're talking about here. My accountant said my accountant has worked with large family businesses, worth millions of dollars, but most of them are still controlled by the families. And she told me, she said, well, it's really interesting how this works. She says you usually get one brilliant guy, and up until recently it was almost always a man. You get one brilliant guy who works their butt off and is brilliant and makes a ton of money. That guy has kids. Those kids take over the business, but they saw how hard dad worked, so they're very appreciative of it. So they work just as hard. She says the problem is the third generation, all they know is money, and they will just take the money and blow it. This is what she's told me.
And
yeah, go ahead.
And in general, that's true. You'll skip a second or third generation who blow it, and then the next generation's got to start over and make it.
Yeah.
But that's normal, has been normal for thousands of years, the way this works.
Right. And the reason I brought this up is because I never thought about this, but you're right. Donald Trump is the second generation of that wealth, not the third, So like if you're saying that, yeah, and I actually didn't know this, that his dad worked his way up. I didn't know that, but that would make sense because he saw how hard his dad worked, So there's effort there.
Correct. He's got the instincts that he's learned through a lifetime of working with working people and common people, to be able to make decisions on the fly, to make the correct decisions on the fly, and make the correct decisions that benefit his workers. Because if you're in the construction business and you're sitting in your ivory tower and you're planning all these buildings, if you don't know how to take care of the working man on the ground, none of the rest of it matters.
That's true. Yeah. And also, if you can't take care of your employees, they're not going to come back. There's that too.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Those employees are key. And he learned many, many years ago, probably the least racist and the least misogynist person that we've ever seen. And that's another thing that the left can't figure out. But he probably employed more women in high management positions than a lot of high executives do.
Well, from what I understand, to this day, the majority of the employees at the Trump organization are women. It's over 50%. Right. So I mean, you're absolutely right about that.
Well, you have to, if you're going to be successful, you have to have the people that can do the job the best. And like him, he understands that it doesn't matter if you're black, white, pink, or purple, or if you're a man or a woman. All that matters is you can do the job better than anybody else.
Yeah.
And so that's how he has learned over many, many years. So that's why he is a man that cares about everyone across the board, does not see color, does not see gender. It's all about the character of the person. Goes back to what Martin Luther King said. We want to be judged on our character, not the color of our skin.
No shit. And you know something? So last Monday, I had your fellow panelist Don Zorro on, and we were talking about the fact that I don't know if you saw this. This was in the news about. Well, it was kind of buried in the news. I saw this on Breitbart. It did not make the major news, and I think this was Oregon, if I'm right. In Oregon, some woman who works for human resources at some government department, was the Department of Parks, I think, and Recreation for the state or something like that. She sued her boss because now get a load of this. This is unbelievable. She sued her boss because he was hiring on the basis of ability and not gender identity.
I saw that. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, that's what the woke culture has brought us.
Yeah.
That's what the Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders bunch have brought us to. Common sense is gone.
Yeah.
They see all these different things, and it's all about dividing us as a people. That's their agenda. That's what they want to do, because if they divide us, if they're successful, then they can control us.
Right. And I have the feeling that because of that, the election is basically going to be more or less of a landslide. I'm starting to think that I mean, I don't know if you've been following this. Early voting is way up everywhere it's going on, and as far as anyone can tell, it's the Republicans that are getting out to vote early for the first time ever. And Don Zorro and I talked about this too. I don't know if you've heard this. For the first time ever in history, well, the figures go back to 92, but everyone's always assumed this was true for at least 40 years before that. For the first time ever, there are more registered Republicans in America than Democrats. I don't know if you've heard that. And this is,
yes,
there's, I mean, the signs are just. I was listening to Laura Trump tonight on this afternoon on Joe Peg's radio show, and she was on and she was saying that, oh Jesus, Larry, I didn't lose my train of thought, did I? What the hell? What's wrong with me? You need to take me up behind the shed and shoot me. What was it?
Yeah, one of the tracks got thrown out.
Yeah. So what did Laura say? She said she was talking about the fact that oh God, Jesus, I can't. I'm terrible. I'm terrible. Honest to God, I'm terrible. But you said something earlier. I want to ask you about, because I've known you for quite a while now, and I've never actually asked you this. So you were saying that in your job you have to deal with a lot of different types of people. What is the process of what does a bail bondsman actually do? I mean, I know what the end result is. You're supposed to,
I've been in the bail bond business 15 years, but I've been in retail and law enforcement, my whole adult life.
Yeah.
I'm working with people.
You were a police investigator before, right?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
A bail bondsman is one of the critical parts of the criminal justice system. We are insurance agents. We write an insurance policy, and we guarantee the court that if the defendant is released, that we guarantee he will show up in court for his court dates. If he doesn't, if he fails to go to court, we go and return him to the jail or to the court, or we have to pay a financial penalty.
Right.
So we have a financial incentive to make sure that these people show up for court when they're supposed to. Now, what that does is it releases them from jail on our bond. it saves the taxpayers in the jail tens of thousands of dollars a year in costs for jailing or holding that person until his court's over. So we're saving the taxpayers a lot of money on the front end. Secondly, if that person does fail to appear, we're the ones, it's our cost to go find him and get him picked up and brought back to court to face the victim. Last week, our office, my wife, made arrangements, and we picked up a gentleman who had fled to Texas. So he is now sitting in jail and going to be returned here at our expense to go to court, take care of this. On the back end of it, one of the most important parts of our job is that because we are the ones that guarantee they'll show up for court to face the charges that are against them, the victims of the crime are the ones that benefit because they get closure. And if it wasn't for the bail bondsman going and finding these people, then the victim is sitting there without closure for years. So it's a financial incentive on us to make sure that they show up. We save the taxpayers a tremendous amount of money in housing and feeding the defendants. And then we provide closure for the victim because we make sure the defendant shows up when he's supposed to.
Larry, what percentage of people actually skip out on their bond?
Over the last 15 years and our records, and we keep track of that, less than 1%.
That's what I figured. Yeah.
Skip out. Yeah. Typically, if defendants are released, the statistics are if they're released with no monetary incentive, and that means no bond, if they're just released on their own recognizance, about 50% never show up for court.
Oh, interesting. So
if they're released on an ankle monitor, a GPS, number one, that costs several times the amount of a surety bond that we would post. So it's a hardship on their family. But secondly, about nationwide, about 60% of those people never show up for court. They cut the bracelet off, let it go dead. You never see them again. So in our industry, we provide an industry average in a profit loss. If you have more than 3% of your people that don't go to court, you're operating in the red, you're out of business. So let's take that top end of 3%, compare it to 50% of the ones that are OR'd and 60% of those on ankle monitors that never show up for court. That's a huge, huge difference. And your victims are sitting out there with no closure and they're victimized all over again by the court.
That's really interesting. So tell me is it that the traditionally the defendant or has to put up, is it 10% of the money?
We charge a fee of 10%, and depending on our risk assessment, the bail bondsman provides the most efficient and most in-depth risk assessment prior to release than anyone in the court system, because we're putting our money up.
Right. But
so
Larry,
we do a
go
thorough
ahead.
risk assessment before we even think about releasing a defendant. We talk to the family, we talk to coworkers, we talk to the boss, we talk to lots of people, and we're trying to determine if there is a risk to an individual or the community or a flight risk. And if there is any indication of that, we do not do the bond.
Yeah. So if the defendant does show up for court, in other words, if it goes all kosher, do you refund that 10% to him back?
No, the 10% is a fee, just
It's
like
a
any
fee.
other insurance
Right.
policy that
Okay.
you would buy.
Yeah.
Just like your car insurance, you don't get a refund if you don't have wrecks.
Right.
It's a fee that's charged for us to be able to operate. And like I say, we're sitting at about a 3% profit loss margin. So if I lose more than 3 out of 100, I'm operating in the red.
Yeah. So if you were a police investigator, how did you get into this?
When I retired from the sheriff's office, and I would go back a little bit as a detective, you're looking into crimes and you're looking for information. And I learned that the bail bondsman has probably more information on a defendant than any other industry. So if I'm looking for someone that I suspect of committing a crime, I learned a long time ago that I need to talk to the bail bondsman because they probably know where they live, what the phone numbers are, how to find them, how to reach them. And so I worked together with them. Then when I left the sheriff's office, one of those agencies contacted me and asked me to go to work for them.
Do you like it?
It's yes, being part of the criminal justice system and holding people's feet to the fire to make sure they do the right thing. Yeah, I really enjoyed it because we're not law enforcement, but we're doing the same thing. We're enforcing the rules of the court and making sure that they show up.
Well, I have known you for a while. I get the impression that's kind of in your blood, you know.
Yeah.
It is, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and that's a good thing because God knows I couldn't do it. All right, so have you arrested any Bigfoot? No.
No, haven't had that opportunity. No.
So I was doing a little reading today. And, we have, that we have Bigfoot people on the show regularly, including you. And every once in a while, I like to do some reading on what's. There's not a lot going on, as much going on in the Bigfoot area as there is the UFO area. But I did look on the BFRO website, and so from what I can tell, they get about half a dozen reports every month. And what I didn't know is maybe you want to explain this. I didn't know this till today. There's different classifications of reports, which is kind of like the close encounters rating for UFOs. It's kind of similar. So there's class A, B, and C. Do you want to explain what that is?
Well, yes, and yes, there's about 6 or 8 reports per month that get investigated and get put on the website.
Yeah, and you're right. We should probably clarify that doesn't mean that's not the only ones they got, right?
No, not the website. That's the public part of the BFRO website.
Right.
The private part for investigators is the reports that come in every month, and 50, 60, 70 reports per month come in of people reporting that they've seen, heard, or otherwise had an encounter. And I will say this about the BFRO. Matt Moneymaker, who started this, had the right idea that all reports would go into a repository, and only those that were investigated by certified investigators and found to be credible are the ones that make the public page.
Yeah.
So what the public doesn't see are the hundreds and, well, probably over 1,500 reports a year of people that report seeing things, and only the ones that have investigators in that area that can go out and verify those reports are the ones that get published and put on the public page.
And then on top of that, Larry, you think about the fact that probably 90% of the people who see a Bigfoot never report it at all,
And that's been my experience out here in the field, knocking on doors, talking to people, pulling in their driveway out here in the middle of the country, stopping and talking to them if they're out in the yard or sitting on the porch, stopping, introducing myself, talking to them, and and gaining their confidence, and then finally asking, making cold calls, cold questions. You ever seen anything walking around on two legs covered in hair at night? And you would be surprised at the number of people who will eventually come forth and say, yes, I know what you're talking about, but I don't want to talk about it. I don't want anybody to know that I've seen one because everybody will ridicule me and things. So for every report we get, I would guess that there's 30 or 40 people that have actually seen them and that will not report it or talk about it.
Yeah. So we were on the last panel discussion we had, and I can't remember when that was. I think after the last debate, just in passing at the end, we were talking about the fact that, and I really do think this is true, and I don't understand what's going on here. 10 or 20 years ago, if you had mentioned to people UFOs and Bigfoot, people will say, well, I can buy the Bigfoot, but I don't buy the UFOs. Now it's kind of the opposite. And I don't really understand why that is. You would think of anything. I don't understand why people have trouble with the fact that there's an undiscovered primate that's running around the woods. I mean, I don't have to tell you this. The giant squid was rumored for 2,000 years, and they didn't catch one until 2006. I mean, I don't understand what the problem with this is. I'm reading through these reports from October on your website, and it's so obvious. First of all, in one of the instances, there's more than one witness, and then people are seeing these 8, 9, 10 foot tall beings, and well, that's not a bear. I'm sure there's a lot of bears that are mistaken for Bigfoot, but something that's 10 feet tall, walking on its hind legs, I don't think so, man. And so there's a report here from Illinois. Am I looking at a guy? He's a truck driver. He's just doing his regular route, driving down the road. Bigfoot crosses in front of him. There's a woman who's driving home, and her usual route is she has to cross over railroad tracks, and she looks to her right to make sure the train isn't coming, and there's a Bigfoot walking across the tracks. I mean, in plain, there's no disguise here. There's no forest, nothing. Just Bigfoot walking around. I don't understand why do people have such a hard time buying this?
Well, I live in Missouri, and we're known as you have to show me,
yeah, right,
before I believe anything.
Right, the show me
but
state.
That's pretty universal for us as people. We're not going to believe it until we see it ourselves. The ridicule thing, people get laughed at. Oh, I saw Bigfoot. No, everybody in town laughs at you, and you're branded as a kook or a nut. And so people are very, very skeptical about standing up and saying, yes, I saw one of these creatures. And so you begin to understand why quite a lot of people don't report it. Now, in our world today, and I don't care if you live in downtown Minneapolis or if you live in the backwoods in Minnesota, most people get up in the morning, eat breakfast, walk out of their house, get in their car, drive to work all day, drive home, get out of their car, walk to their house, go inside, turn the TV on, and they don't leave their house till the next morning. They have no idea what's going on outside their house
Yeah.
for all of those hours in darkness, even in the daylight. They're sitting in there watching TV. And so, yeah, they could have everything around them and they would never know it. They'll laugh at their neighbors who says, yeah, we've got Bigfoot right here between us. And they go, nah, you're crazy, because they never look.
Yeah.
They have no clue what's going on. I've run into that a number of times, but that's kind of where we're at. We'll believe what's on TV or social media before we believe what's actually real.
Well,
Bigfoot falls into that category.
Have you found this in your investigating, though? We have a problem right now because it's so easy to fake stuff that now, video or film recording is not no longer considered like, sacrosanct. I mean, like there's the Patterson Gimlin film, which was that famous film from 1963 that showed Bigfoot walking along this creek. That was like the very first real Bigfoot recording. It would, people have always said, well, that was fake, but the thing is, if it was faked, it was a guy in a suit. It was not a faked recording. It was not a faked film. Now you can fake a film by whole cloth. Little AI, little special effects, and next thing you know, you have a Bigfoot, and it's not even real. And now people are starting to doubt even their eyes. I think that might be part of the problem. I mean, do you?
Well, you always question if you see something that you can't explain. You're always going to question yourself. And yes, and by the way, the Patterson Gimlin film has been studied by experts the world over, and it's been tested and tested who knows how many times. And today in 2024, they cannot claim that that is a fake creature or a fake film. They cannot break through the fact that that is a true recording, and the animal itself, the creature itself, it was impossible to fake that kind of a suit. Even the people in Hollywood that are special effects in 1967, there was not that ability to create
I
that
know.
level of suit or being able to fake that creature.
I learned all
So
this along with probably you. The very first time I saw that film 30, 40 years ago, I thought it was fake. I really did. And then I read about all the stuff and people who have like blown it up and examined it and all that sort of stuff about how you're right. People said that in 1967, even the people in Hollywood doing this said we could not have done that, So, I mean, maybe now, but not that, certainly not then, So, and the other
correct,
thing is,
correct,
you have to look at the film very carefully. It's pretty obvious that's a female because she's got breasts bouncing up and down. You don't notice that right
correct.
away, but and so it would be kind of hard to fake that too. At least make it look credible. So yeah, I understand that film is probably has been deemed real. I understand that, but there's some people you'll never convince ever. Once again, I don't understand people's reluctance to believe the fact. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff we haven't discovered, I mean, Christ, we don't even know where the freaking UFOs are from yet. That doesn't mean they're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
real, And so, and I don't understand this either. I mean, I get back to the giant squid. 2,000 years, sailors were talking about this animal, and nobody believed them. 2,000 years over and over again, and then 2006 they caught one. It's like, what the
Yep.
hell? How much like? And maybe it's because I don't understand. I mean, I have friends who go on about this too, about people about the unreliability of witnesses. But and you're a police person, so you know about this probably better than anybody. The thing is, okay, people are unreliable witnesses, but when you have thousands of people reporting that they saw something and they don't know each other and they're not connected to each other, and the descriptions are pretty much the same, for Christ's sake, man, some of them must be real, even if the majority of them aren't. You know, that's the way I look at it anyway. But I don't know. What do I know? I'm a guy on the radio.
Well, uh, as investigators, we get together. We have expeditions, and a lot of investigators from all over the country come together, and we compare notes and talk about what's going on. And the number of, I know the BFRO is probably the best source for factual reports. There are a lot of reports that come in from people saying, well, I want to tell you about this. I want you to come investigate it, but I refuse to allow you to publish it. There are quite a few of those. Now, when I was asked to start this, I was a police investigator.
Yeah, matter of fact, I was going to
And
ask you that. You want to
yes,
end our little interview here with your story on how you got into this?
sure.
Yeah.
And I left the sheriff's office, and I'd gone on one of these investigations because I thought it was kind of an interesting, and it's out in the woods, and I like to camp out in the woods. So I go to this expedition, and I'm starting to hear all these things about this creature, and which really intrigued me. And they found out I was a police investigator, so they asked me if I would be an investigator for the BFRO. And yeah, and basically what an investigator for the BFRO is, when someone gives a report, you contact them and you make the determination if they're being credible, if they're telling the truth, or if they're a hoaxer. Well, that's all I did for the sheriff's office is interview people, or a lot of what I did. So I said yes. But what you have to understand is every time that you go out you have to start from the point of there is nothing here. You have to start from I have no belief in this at all, and I have to build on the interviews and the physical evidence that I find on my own that corroborates the story that's being told. And that's where I started. So, and from there until the time that I actually was looking at them through the lens of a camera while we were recording one night, at that point, I could say, yes, they are real. I can see that now. Yes, I'm looking at one through the camera at this point. So yes, it is. Up till that point, I was skeptical. As an investigator, I was skeptical. You still have to be skeptical when somebody says, yeah, I saw something. Okay, you saw something, tell me what, and then you go out and you find the physical evidence to corroborate what they told you. That's how this works, and that's what I do.
And God bless you for it too. So so what's it going to take? Are they going to have to catch one of these things?
I fully believe, and I can't corroborate this because the government won't tell you about it, but I fully believe the government has the evidence. They've got numerous bodies that they've recovered, and but like we've discussed before, the consequence of science or the government coming out and say yes, Bigfoot is real, the consequences of that statement are tremendous. You're talking about something that would possibly destroy major segments of our economy.
Yeah, like the lumber industry. Right.
Lumber industry. It would be, that's just one of them, but it would be a very powerful impact on the economy of the country.
Right.
So I don't think that you're going to hear about that they're going to admit to you that they've got them for a while yet.
No, I've
figure out how to handle this.
Larry, I've heard the same stories, and for the same reason, that the government is keeping it secret because they've said, I don't know the other industries, but this is the obvious one, that if they actually confirm the existence of Bigfoot, it would basically shut down the entire U.S. lumber industry overnight because you would not be able to cut trees down anymore.
Correct, and I think that scientific world, the world of science, if they were to admit that these things are real, it would shake the scientific community up so much because of the way they categorize species, that it would cause a tremendous shock to the scientific world, and they don't want that.
Yeah, and it's amazing. I mean, this is a whole nother topic for discussion, but it is amazing how many people in the scientific community are completely wedded to their personal theory and have spent 40 or 50 years propagating it. They don't want it. It's literally their own self-preservation. They do not want it proved wrong, So, I mean, it's the science, people talk about trust the science, but science is crazy. It is, especially when you have people who literally want to deny science because it's not in their self-interest, So I don't know.
Well, and the last thing I'll say, we're talking about an animal that's been documented since 9 989 AD.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Leif Erikson was the first one that wrote about them back before the year 1000 on his first trip to the North American continent. And they've been known and seen ever since that time, long before the European American became a part of what we now know as history. So
Yeah.
they've been here a lot longer than that.
Right.
So,
Larry, I can't thank you enough. It's always fascinating. We went over
you're
time and I
welcome.
don't care. So, you know,
Thank you, Jim.
yeah, we'll see you on another panel. I got to talk to you about Halloween, but
Okay.
I'll do that offline. So, I'm looking forward to that if you can make it. But really, thank you for your insight. I mean, and for what you do too. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. The world appreciates Larry.
You're welcome.
You take care. All right, we'll see you.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Larry Newman, the president of the Missouri Alliance of Bail Bonds Agents. I got it right. And field investigator for the Bigfoot Field Research Organization. Now, if you're interested, the Bigfoot Field Research Organization has their website at bfro.net. And if you've ever seen a Bigfoot or decide you need to report one, that's where you do it. It's kind of like MUFON. MUFON is the thing, the Mutual UFO Network is pretty much now the acknowledged place. There's other organizations too. And just like there's other Bigfoot organizations. But these are the major ones where you actually go to report like a UFO sighting. You want to report a Bigfoot sighting, you go to the bfro.net website and you do that. And a guy like Larry or somebody else, depending on what part of the country you're in, will actually go out and investigate it and your claim. So like I was telling Larry, I spent this afternoon reading through these cases on the website. These are just the ones from October, this month, last 3 weeks. But man, I mean, this is some of the stuff's really compelling. And the thing is, they're kind of compelling in their ordinariness. In other words, like I said, it's a guy driving his truck down a road and Bigfoot crosses, or it's a woman crossing railroad tracks and is looking to make sure the train isn't coming, and she sees a Bigfoot walking across the tracks, and just stuff like that. It's just, or people going about their daily lives and there's a giant 10-foot tall animal walking around. And the thing that we didn't get a chance to talk to Larry about, maybe next time, is about the fact that someone's pointed out, and it's pretty obvious, that if these animals have eluded capture for 900 years, they're pretty freaking smart. I don't think there's not dummies here. I know that Oregon has a state law that you cannot shoot a Bigfoot because a lot of people think they're more human than animal, and that might be, so and I don't know if other states have that too, but I know Oregon does. So at any rate, we're going to go on to part 2 of our show. You can call in. Call in number is 563-999-3435. Love to talk to you. I got a couple things. Part 2, we always talk about some of the weird, crazy news. And we'll do that right after these messages. Stay tuned, please. Can I do this? Hi, all. Jim Peters again for Conk News. Let me tell you one of the greatest things about Conk News. It's free. It's completely and totally free. You don't need to register. You don't need to log in, subscribe, none of that stuff. Sure, they run a few ads on the front page, but if you're an old fogey like me, you might actually appreciate this, because when you check out Conk News at conk.com, you'll probably notice that it's the closest thing to an old-fashioned hard copy newspaper that you'll find online. The latest up-to-the-minute news from 75 high-quality sources collected every 3 hours, all laid out with photos and headlines directly from the articles. And when you click on a story, you go directly to that story. No ad page, no interstitial page, none of that stuff. This is the way online news is meant to be. And did I mention that it's completely free? Seriously, how much of stuff in America is free now, right? That's of quality anyway. So check this out for yourself. It's at conk.com, CONK.com. Conk News. part 2 of Jim Peters at Night. I'm Jim Peters. Thanks once again to Larry Newman for joining us for the first half. Okay, you can call in. We can talk about anything you want. 563-999-3435. I actually like it when you come up with the topics. See, the way this works is that we had a featured guest, and now you're the guest. You can call up, and we'll talk about whatever you want. In the meantime, I got a few things here I want to run by you. Usually, we talk about science stuff here, UFO stuff, Bigfoot stuff like we were before. This is DARPA. Do you guys know what DARPA is? A Defense Initiative Research something. It's a government agency. And if you watched Lost, you should know about DARPA because they referenced it a lot. A lot of people thought when they were doing that on Lost, the TV show, that they were making that up. But DARPA is a real government agency. So DARPA is trying to revolutionize this understanding of how our brain constructs reality. They've started something called the Inspire program, and they've enlisted a bunch of scientists to try to figure this out. So the premise is that your brain constructs reality, and maybe reality is real, or maybe it isn't, and they want to find that out. I gotta hand it to the government and also kind of society in general. Now we started to open up a little bit about these things that sound on the surface sound fantastical and unreal, but there's a lot of people. There's a theory, for example, that the entire universe is constructed from information. I'm not talking about like matter information. I'm talking about literally information, that consciousness constructs the universe. And so if you have no consciousness, you have no universe. There's a lot of people who think that. That's a theory that's been going around for a while. So the DARPA, this is your U.S. government now, is trying to figure out what part of your brain constructs reality. Well, that'll be interesting because God knows reality is like crazy enough the way it is. And then the other thing that's going on is that the Pentagon, the U.S. military, is trying to come up with credible examples of undetectable deep fake internet users. In other words, they're trying to get AI to create fake internet users, fake social media users that are undetectable by the algorithmic software run by the social media companies. Now, the amazing thing about this is that our government has been bitching about and moaning about the fact that other governments are doing this. But now it's come out that we're trying to do the same thing. I don't know if that's hypocrisy, if we're just trying to keep up with the Joneses, or if we started this and then people were copying us and we didn't know it. I have no idea. But so the idea is they want to come up with so it's like you come up with a social profile that posts pictures, does whatever normal people do on their social media profiles, except none of it's real. The photos aren't real, the information's not real, none of it is real. And so they're trying to do this to be able to dupe, like it's a defense initiative to be able to dupe other countries or other terrorist organizations into following somebody and handing over information. That supposedly is the theory. There's a lot of people involved, social scientists, who say this is crap. There's no real reason you have to or want to do this, but the government's doing it anyway. And finally, we got here that I don't know if we've talked about this before, that Microsoft bought the OpenAI company at OpenAI.com that created ChatGTP. Well, they didn't buy it. I'm sorry. They're the major investor. They don't own it, but they're the major investor in OpenAI. And the relationship between those two companies is faltering partly because OpenAI, because they're creating AI technology, needs a massive, massive amount of power. Now, I don't know if we've talked about this on the show too. Microsoft just bought the former Three Mile Island nuclear plant facility that has been running for years. They bought it, and they're going to start it back up. And the reason they're going to start it back up is because they need so much power just to run like their Copilot BS AI system. It takes an enormous amount of power to run this. And I don't know if you guys understand this. It already takes an enormous amount of power just to run Facebook and Google. It's unbelievable. Facebook and Google have data centers all over the world, and usually they're built right next to power plants because they need the power. Or usually, or they will harness hydroelectric power from a river. They'll build it next to a river, and these data centers are huge, and that's all to store your goddamn goddamn vacation photos. That's why they're doing that. All those photos you post of you and your girlfriend, yeah, that's right. That's what it takes up. It's free for you, but somebody's got to buy that stuff. Somebody's got to power it. Now, Facebook is also and Google together are the single most profitable and effective advertising facilities ever devised by man. So they make all the money from these companies. 90% of Google's actually, I think now it's 80%. It was 90% up to recently. 80% of Google's entire revenue comes from search engine ads. Everything else they do, they lose money on. That's Gmail, Google Photos, that Waymo car system they're running, everything. They lose money off of everything. Everything's paid for it by search engine ads, and they're still making a ton of money, even losing money and all the rest of the stuff. And that was Serge Brin and Larry Page. That was their idea. That's what they wanted to do. And they set the company up like that. But to run so that's to run everything they're running, to run Facebook, to store all that stuff. I don't even know how they do it. I gotta admit, I think that they literally must have a team of people at every data center who run around all day long and install more hard drives. You can't. You have to store this stuff somewhere. It's like now John Dvorak, who's an interest columnist, the guy, I don't even know if he's alive anymore. He was doing it forever, and frankly, he was an old dude. So I got to check that out when when we're done here. But he said, and he's absolutely right about this. He said this like 10 or 15 years ago, that Google could not go on. At some point, they would run into a brick wall, because I don't know if you know how this works. What Google does is they basically create a mirror of not the entire internet, but all the internet people want to access, which is actually the only relatively small part of the whole internet. So they create a mirror of the web on their servers, because when you go out to search something in Google, they don't search. They will bring you back a list of search results, but they don't actually go out on the web. They go to their own servers and do it. So to do that, they have something called spiders, and these are little programs that go out onto the web and follow links, and they send that stuff back to Google, that information, and then Google constructs a version of the web in their own in-house system. That's the way it works. So now I don't think this is an exaggeration. I think I have this right, that the last I heard, there's 1 billion pages added to the World Wide Web every day. 1 billion. Now, even if you're not going to index all of that, it's still a boatload of stuff to index. I mean, you have to save. And so, Dvorak's point was that they cannot do this forever. They will at some point they will run out of storage space. And he's right. They will. Which is now the reason for the switch to AI, because AI doesn't work that way, even though the storage requirements for AI are way higher than the storage requirements to search the web. So, and also, it takes a lot more power to run AI too. Now, the search engine stuff takes enough power the way it is already. I think I've heard that it takes 5 times more power to run like Copilot, the Microsoft search engine, or my AI, a little app, than it does to actually run like Bing. I don't know if that's true. But that's what I've heard. It certainly makes sense to me based on what I know. So yeah, it's like, so anyway, this article was about the fact, and this was in Breitbart, about the fact that the partnership between Microsoft and OpenAI is kind of faltering, because OpenAI wants more power and they want more money, and so and Microsoft is starting to balk. It's like it's like, so I don't know. It's gonna be really interesting. So yeah, one more chance to call here, 563-999-3435. Otherwise, I think we're going to call it a night. Tomorrow night, we're off. Had that planned for quite a while, like actually months. So we're off tomorrow. Thursday. No, I'm sorry. Today's Monday. What I'm talking about. Okay. Tomorrow's Tuesday. We're going to do a show. I don't have a guest. I admit it. I don't have any guests. And I said recently that we weren't going to do shows or we don't have guests anymore, but we're going to do one. So I'm going to sit here. I'm going to prattle on for an hour or whatever. Hopefully you call up. Wednesday, we're taking off. Wednesday, I've had planned off for some time. Thursday, Jackie Dorothy. She's a columnist for Cowboy State Daily, which is the largest online newspaper for the state of Wyoming. And she writes a column called Haunted Wyoming. That's what it's called. I had to stop and think about it for a second. So she runs around the state documenting stuff. Supposedly, Wyoming has more than its share of hauntings, and especially because there's a lot of ghost towns and stuff like that in the state. Now, Wyoming, I don't even know much about Wyoming. It is both in terms of population, it's the smallest state in the United States, even though it's a quite large piece of land. I mean, like the contrast, that would be like Rhode Island, which is the smallest state physically, but has more people than Wyoming does. And also, it has the least population density. So yeah, it's pretty big, and there's very few people. The entire state has only 560,000 people. I'm here in downtown Minneapolis. My neighborhood has more people than that. And that's not much of an exaggeration. It really isn't. So the entire state of Wyoming has only about 500,000 people in it. And so there's a lot of not only undeveloped land, there's a lot of abandoned land. I was reading in Wikipedia about the fact that Wyoming has more land owned by the federal government in it than any other state. About half of the land in the entire state of Wyoming is owned by the federal government. So that'll give you some idea. And people are really, really spread out. And the biggest city is Cheyenne, and Cheyenne has only 80,000 people in it. So anyway, I'm assuming this newspaper or online news site is headquartered in Cheyenne, but maybe I shouldn't. I don't know, where else it is, but anyway, she writes this column. She, among a lot of other things, she writes for the paper, but she writes this. The reason I got sucked into this is because I was reading her column called "Mysterious" or "A Haunted Wyoming," and we're going to talk to her on Thursday. That should be kind of interesting. So, anyway, folks, I want to thank you for listening, and I want to thank you for watching. If you're watching, we changed the camera angle a little bit tonight, and I'm gonna in the studio we ended up effing with the lights for a year, and it's probably the same things that happen here too, because I don't know if I look that alive. But at any rate, I'm looking at myself right now. Hi. I'm gonna wave at the camera. There you go. Hi. So I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you for listening to Blog Talk Radio. I'm Jim Peters. We'll be back tomorrow night. We are going to have a show. No guests. You can call up and you can be the guest, okay? That's 563-999-3435 tomorrow night. Good night, Esperanza. Good night, Uncle Donnie. And good night to you, wherever you are. We'll see you tomorrow night. Take care, everybody.